I'm WG and it's time for our dedicated Narja SaveData guide. What you can expect from this video is 5 different ways you can build Narja, as well as also a full breakdown sheet of every single planet and which items you want to look for on each of those, so that you exactly know where you go to farm and what you farm for. So let's start it off. So for our first section, we have this brief overview in terms of tier class of every single epiphany. The lower the number, the better. And also the world copy, if that is a card that you would, for example, benefit having multiple of. We are not going to go too in depth with these ones. So we have 2 of them, Shackles of Hunger and Bottomless Hunger, as well as also Voluntary Control and Domain of Veracity. If you want to find those, you just have to join the Discord. Once there, they're pretty easy to find. You either go to the Narja Stretch channel and you find them in a pinned message, or you head over to the YouTube and you just look at the pin. So for our first Narja, as always, also images in the Discord, we have the General Support style. This is going to be a Narja that you can slot into any team at any point in time, and you're going to get a lot of value out of it. The key parts here are either the multi-veracity attunement or the max veracity attunement combined with the decreased cost by 2 or standard decreased cost, as well as also obviously the veracity and then decreased cost. Those are the backbone of it, but more importantly also the opportunity to go for extra morale. For 1 turn gain 2 morale, for 1 turn gain 1 morale possible on these 2, as well as also that being possible on the veracity. You could also get an additional 2 morale, and as you can see right here, you also have the ability to obviously get something like a Divine Epiphany on any of those, where the preferred ones would be either draw or AP. So then we have the Domain of Veracity right here with the increased Ravage, allowing whichever character you're trying to boost or play with to generate AP to delay the enemy by 1 turn, and to also potentially trigger synergies in regards to Ravage, as well as getting 3 Veracity upon Ravage, which, because it's AoE, is if you, for example, have 4 enemies, these enemies together can give you up to 12 Veracity. Finishing that entirety off with a pretty open selection of Voluntary Control, with the multi or the increased Voluntary Control, as well as Predation Gain being the favorite, the most broadly applicable. But then you also have the ability to go for the 10 Veracity plus Predation, so long as you have an attack card you know you're going to use a lot, or the for 2 turns each time action count decreases Veracity increase, or even just a straight up 3 morale buff, or the ability to move meal time to your hand to pull off some synergies between her and her ultimate. The next one we have is our defensive buff build. The most important ones are the Domain of Veracity, 100% defense damage based taken increase, as well as the for 1 turn 100% defense based damage dealt. These 2 together are your biggest source of damage bonus in that regard. You could also potentially clone this and then go for a cost reduction as well, or even just a cost reduction combined with the defense based damage taken increase can go a long way. Once more, with the most solid Voluntary Control, you could also find something like a neutral Epiphany that gives you draw, or even a Divine Epiphany on draw for this Voluntary Control, whereas then for the Shackles of Hunger, you either get yourself the multi-veracity to further help boost the damage, or even something like the based on veracity owned up to 6-hitter, or if you're looking to really get that one big mega hit out, even the retained decreased veracity by up to 5, and based on the decrease go up to a 200% damage bonus, as well as also, so long as you decrease by 5, generate 3 predation, meaning the next hit is going to naturally get a damage bonus of 200 from the card, 30 from a veracity stack, and 100 from the predation stack, making it a grand total of 330% to a singular hit. So that is the defensive buff build, the idea behind it, followed up by the straight up DPS build, which uses again the core cards of increasing defense-based damage for the entire team, as well as defense-based damage taken by the enemy, but entirely relying on multiple copies of the Shackles of Hunger Epiphany to allow you to, get a massive 6-hitter based on you having 12 veracity, as well as also the ability to potentially clone Bottomless Hunger to get something like Delete, which gives you 7 veracity, and for 1 turn, each time veracity is triggered, you boost the next mealtime used by 40%, which you can also use up over multiple turns, meaning that you could technically infinitely stack mealtime damage boosts so long as you use veracity in a singular turn. And then the finishing touch, once again, the voluntary control, though there also you are a bit more free, but that would be like the most optimal state. Then we have ourselves the healer build, and obviously if you're at this point wondering, okay, but where is mealtime? Mealtime is obviously not clonable and always in your deck just as a unique card as a one-off. So now the healer deck is a bit more of a meme, but the main staples, if you really just want full on raw healing, the main staples are going to be the ability to create a shield by decreasing veracity to further increase your tankiness, or just giving you more veracity for more healing. More veracity as well as cost reduction, so you can just play out whatever cards you want. And then the more important ones are the domain of veracity increase, increasing the healing from domain of from mealtime that you can use once per turn by 200%, as well as also potentially multiple copies of the domain of veracity, which applies defense-based damage to all enemies, and when hitting the target, meaning that this singular thing applies 5 times to each enemy hit. When hitting the target, you can gain up to 5 times a heal of 40%, pretty much doubling the healing effect you're going to get from a singular veracity stack, whereas 40 from the veracity, 40 from this buff. This right here together, combined with just playing out mealtime, is a incredible amount of healing. Where we then also have the basic attack buffer build. So the basic attack buffer build focuses mainly just on this singular card right here, which allows basic attacks to never consume veracity, because if they do, they just give you 1 back, as well as in general boosting basic attack damage by plus 50%, which you can combine with a early copy of voluntary control and the ability to, for example, move a mail-in card back into hand and every single time create a predation, where then the other core cards are either the ability to gain a massive amount of veracity through the attunement, or use it up for 1 big hit, as well as just cost reduction plus more veracity, just so you can also end up boosting the cards that aren't basic cards being played by these characters, as well as also right here the ability to get that that tenacity break, which can also really work on Mei-Lin, who relies on Ember stacks, so that you can also use those against then the ravaged targets and prepare for a big Mei-Lin burst. So these were the 5 styles on how you can build your Narja, and now let's go into the very first planet. So again, images can be found in the Discord, in the Narja Strats or CZN YouTube channel if you wanna, well, otherwise you can also just screenshot them. I try to always stay out of the picture. But what you see right here is the Laboratory Zero. Laboratory Zero, in terms of like the highest deck potential, it's definitely it, and that is because it has the access to a removal event. How Laboratory Zero now works is you have to roll for a Laboratory Zero, which can then anywhere be of any tier depending on what difficulty you change it. But you can roll into it, and every time you beat Laboratory Zero, you're also guaranteed to get exactly another Laboratory Zero map after. So instead of rushing out, because that's very resource extensive, you would rather finish a run and then just go into a next Laboratory Zero run. So yeah, we have a removal event, which usually saves you around 50 save data, due to it saving you the cost of the 3rd card removal, where card removals go 20 cost, 30 cost, 50 cost to get them removed. So that is one of the bonuses, and the only other way to get this removal event would be by playing the Bluepot planet, but the Bluepot planet itself doesn't really have any useful cards for Narja, so you'd basically be relying on items that are available on every single planet, so mainly the Cthulhu or Senectus items, which is the invade boss after defeating a normal stage, or obviously the shop items. So that's also why we're not really going to talk about the Passion Planet, because while it does have a removal event, it's not that interesting a target. And that is also because you do not really need a multi-divine copy deck for Narja for her to be good. You really do not need the removal event to make, for example, a 4 divine copy deck viable, right? But now that we have these basics out of the way, what do you see here? What you see here is like a complete, like, put together of every singular card that is relevant, or every single item is relevant. Everyone is labeled as Cthulhu if they only come from Cthulhu or Senectus. And then the other ones here. The notable important bits here are, this one is tiny because of the fact that this only really works if you use her own cards to reduce her own cards to 0 cost. The same is true for the Foggy Crystal Ball. And the Cthulhu gun itself, yes, it still gives you 18% attack, but that still isn't that great due to her being a defense-based damage unit, but it is still nonetheless a good weapon. And then we have ourselves the shop weapon, the Obsidian Blade, but usually you want to just go with the Mutant Predator Spike, being pretty straightforward and pretty simple. And for the dopamine injector, it would require you to get card draw from Divine Epiphanies or from the outside in with gear bags or reorganizers or whatever you can find, because otherwise you won't be able to trigger the card effect. And then here we just have the item that you either get from the boss or you don't. And obviously the chess piece that you can get by encountering a certain normal event in the interior. The same is true for the Wings of Freedom, where then here on the right side we have items that are mainly available throughout the shop, or obviously from drops, as well as this one from the battle test, and then the Cthulhu ring itself. Bringing us to the City of Mists. So the City of Mist itself is like a weaker version of Lab Zero. It doesn't have a removal event. It shares most of the loot pool with it, at least. So you still have, for example, for the Foggy Crystal Ball, you still have the fragment of the Empty Void chess piece from the boss. But what you do have also is this chess piece right here. The Contaminated Helmet. Upon playing the City of Mist, you can encounter an event, and during that event you can just get yourself the Contaminated Helmet to get yourself a 12% defense increase, which is equivalent to Cthulhu gear without any of the Cthulhu RNG involved. Whereas then the only other difference is the Flower of Dead Souls, which would allow you to increase the damage of the second attack card played each turn onwards, which could help with, for example, a DPS Narja, but it's not really all that important. So that is the City of Mist. Alright, now next up we have the Order Planet. Before you wonder, okay, what the hell is this? Let's just briefly mention it. This is the strongest monster card available in the entire game. What it allows you is to get an additional copy of any card of your choosing available from any of your characters in your current team. So, for example, you could get another Unity of Attack and Defense, the Move Basic Attack card for Mei Lin, another Homing Laser for Serenial, any of these combinations. And this is the only planet you can get it, and the only way you can get it is by, in the exterior, fighting the Spirit Key Fox enemy, defeating it, and getting lucky enough to get it dropped. It's a bit more of just an additional benefit, but by no means is it anything that you have to particularly chase. On the other hand, the only real differences we have here is in terms of items. So, for the weapons, we have the Flower of Life in both the normal and the rare version, which you can get upon encountering an event. What it says is that if you're at max HP, you deal plus 40/plus 50% damage, and with the healing of Narja being so reliable or even so achievable by just, for example, using up Veracity stacks from someone else to heal yourself to full before you play her cards, these can absolutely be taken into consideration as top tier weapons. And then you have the dagger that tricked the whatever the hell, which can give you 12% crit damage, and the sword reflected in the lake, which says that when there are 6 or more cards in hand, you get a 25% damage amount increase. But it's mainly going to be between potentially a Cthulhu weapon, the dagger, or the Flowers of Life. Whereas then in the chest piece department, you have the Fairy King's Crown, which can give you crit chance, or the Mask of Flames, which can drop from the bosses, that can further increase your damage dealt to enemies inflicted by vulnerable by 35%. The reason why that's so important is because in general it is very hard to find offensively geared, offensive related chest pieces as a whole, and here you have 2 of those, and then you obviously still have your standard Cthulhu array, whereas then you also have the ability to find the Verdant Shackles by encountering the rare version, or the Verdant Day by encountering the normal version of an event, which can either give you a permanent 12% attack, 12% defense, or a on odd turn, so every second turn, a 8% or 12% defense bonus, with then the other items being your, more standard, readily available drops. So that brings us then to Twin Star Shadow. Twin Star Shadow itself doesn't really have any impressive rings, doesn't have any impressive chest pieces, but has a huge array of impressive and useful weapons, like for example the plus 20% crit damage weapon, which you can also get reliably from a boss drop, the increased damage amount by 30% against ravaged targets, which works really well in synergy with, for example, a Serenial, or just, for example, even a Maelin, now that you have access to the increased tenacity damage taken card, so it isn't even locked to just Serenial. Then the Lepidiolas, whatever whip, which increases the damage amount of attack cards with the cost of 1 or less, which definitely fits Narja, as well as also works so long as you reduce the cost of the cards. So it never really stops working. This one is just guaranteed from a event encounter. And then the Formica's Perfect Spear, which is also an event encounter, can give you an increase of your damage amount by by 7% for each enemy on the field. So if there's 4 enemies, you get 28%. And it then further also increases the damage of AoE attacks, which Narja herself has plenty access to, by a further 10%. So the more enemies you face, the more damage you deal, which could also come in quite useful in, for example, the tower, with then, as we said, the other items being a lot more standard. Whereas then here we have ourselves our last planet we're going to talk about, and that is the Foretold Ruins. So Foretold Ruins, what's different? The things that are mainly different are the access to the rune lands. When using 5 or more action points, you get a plus 25 damage amount, shield gain, and healing bonus for the character that has it equipped. So that means you, for example, spend 3 AP turn 1, 3 AP turn 2, and then you have the condition fulfilled, or you just spend 5 AP in a singular turn. Whereas the more interesting ones are definitely in the ring section, and that is, you have, for example, the Eye of the Punisher. If the enemy is alone, 30% increased damage to said enemy, or the big highlight, the Corrupted Core, with a massive 15% defense multiplier, as well as the ability to retain plus 20% shield. So that is the Foretold Ruins, with again more of these basic and Cthulhu drops just spread around. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you were able to take something away. Once again, if you're looking for these images without me in it, Discord is where you find them. Peace!